And then they noticed as you dig down through, in England, you find certain layers in sequence. You find a layer of chalk, and then you may find a layer of limestone or a layer of something else, shale or something, right? And then they go over to France across the English Channel and find a similar thing and say, wow, look at this. The same layer must have extended all the way across. And it probably did. There's no question. But then they come to the conclusion that each of the layers is a totally different age, and they find fossils in there, and they give it an age of how old it is based on how long they think the sedimentation would take.
Okay, hold on. That's one way, and this is kind of interesting, because if you read Darwin's Origin of Species, the radiometric dating was not established at that point, right? So the dates that Darwin gives for the different layers and stuff weren't based on radiometric dating. They were based on things like sedimentary deposit rates. And he gets within about an order of magnitude of what we now think is true, which is pretty good if you think about what kind of knowledge they were limited to at the time.
Okay.
He talks about the things are like in the hundreds of millions of years range, which is within a factor of 10 of what they think all of it is now. I'd say that was pretty good. But anyway.
Wait a minute. I'm talking to my secretary at the same time here. You're saying I'm trying to understand this too, because I've studied this for years, teaching earth science. I've been very interested in this. The sedimentation rate is what started this, and it was many creationists, Christians, or supposedly Christians, involved in this. I agree.
Yeah,
but
Darwin was a Christian.
But now, the layers date the fossils, and the fossils date the layers.
That is incorrect.
When I asked you how do you tell a rock is Cambrian, you told me by the fossils.
Yeah. Okay. Now here's the thing. They've done radiometric dating on the layers since then.
But see, that's
how they established the absolute dates of these layers.
No. Listen, Jared. This idea that the layer was so old, was a certain age, was taught for over 100 years before there ever was a radiometric dating.
So what?
Okay, so this becomes established dogma in science that, that's a trilobite, that's Cambrian, or Ordovician or whatever. And so it becomes established dogma. So when it comes to radiometric dating in the last 50 years, if the radiometric date gives a wild number, as they often do, it'll be rejected because you can only compare it based on the index fossil. So you're right back to the circular reasoning.
No, I don't think so.
I know so.
The problem with this is that in science, especially in things that are as difficult to study as geology and biology, you're going to have anomalies. Wouldn't you be suspicious if you didn't get anomalies?
I think if you want everybody to pay for this to be taught as science, it's kind of up to you to prove.
No, science doesn't prove anything.
Well, they teach it dogmatically, and over nearly 60% of the population does not believe it and does not appreciate their tax dollars going to pay for this.
The U.S. population, because the rest of the world isn't diluted like America is.
Okay, so in the U.S., let's quit teaching it. And let's let the rest of the world teach what they want.
Oh, man. Well, that's an issue of politics, Kent. That has nothing to do with science.
Well, in the Muslim countries, they can teach Islam if they want, and in the Catholic countries, they can teach Catholicism. But most of the people do not believe the Earth is billions of years old. I mean, that's what the surveys show consistently, over and over.
Kent, what would you say if there were a religion in some part of the world that were well established, and most of the people in that place totally disagreed with physics? They just thought that electromagnetic theory was bunk, and that it shouldn't be taught in the schools because it went against their religious dogma. Would you think they would have a right to go ahead and throw it out of the schools?
We already have that in countries. For instance, there are countries where they teach the kids when they're little, hey, if you kill somebody, cut off his head and eat his brains because, he's your enemy and you get his spirit that way.
Okay,
that's being taught. All kinds of crazy religions are being taught all over the world.
So surely you would agree then that it's not good, sound practice to ban a teaching of a particular field of science because people of a certain religion don't like it.
Well, your question is mixed up there. Okay, I'm not in favor of banning anything that has to do with science. But see, you're trying to sneak evolution in as part of science in your question.
No, I think you need to prove that it's not science first, or show some kind of evidence that shows it's false, which you haven't done.
I have done it over and over. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog.
Nobody claims a dog has ever produced a non-dog. That's a straw man.
You believe a dog came from a non-dog?
No, you just reversed it.
Do you believe a dog came from a non-dog?
Yeah, it seems like there's pretty good evidence for that.
Okay, but that's not science. It's not observable. It's not testable. We don't have any evidence, no proof of that.
Neither are lots of things in physics. You can't see an atom.
But see, the kind of evidence we see to document the physics theories is so different than the kind of evidence. Than the kind of evidence they claim to see evolution.
No doubt, you're absolutely right. So what?
So we don't see any of the claims of evolution, of macroevolution.
You don't see any of the claims of atomic physics.
We certainly do.
No, none.
You can see the results. You can see it actually work. I mean,
yeah, you can see living organisms that are a result of evolution.
No, you can see living organisms. They are not the result of evolution.
Yeah, and you can see matter just how you can't see atoms.
No, don't you see? You are. It's true you can see living organisms, but see, your belief that it happened is so strong that you just assume that your belief is now part of the fact. Well, after all, here's the giraffe. That proves evolution.
Your belief that electrons orbit protons is so strong that you just interpret chemistry that way every time that you mix chemicals together.
True. I believe that the atomic theory, Bohr's, the different type, how many different models are there now for the atom? What's the atom look like? And there's now a new one coming out. There's a new one they're developing that's not even the cloud theory. I forget what it's called now. But I don't think we really know for sure. But,
of course we don't. We don't ever claim to. In science, nothing is ever proven.
But we know when you mix certain chemicals, you get this reaction. We also know when you mix two dogs, you get dog. You don't get non-dog.
Yeah, you get slightly different dogs, and you have mutations that show up, and you have natural selection that operates, all of which are basic parts of evolutionary theory.
And we know that they are limited. This is what the evolutionists don't see or won't admit.
They are limited in the brief span of time in which a breeder can operate.
There's your God coming in right there.
I could tell you that when you think an atom exists, I could say, oh, you're just appealing to your God of scale or your God of size, because you can't see the atom, and so you have to make up this idea that it's small just to justify your belief.
Well, as long as all of the taxpayers have to pay for one view to be taught, I'm going to gripe and I'm going to keep my program going. And I think if you believe very strongly that dogs came from non-dogs and that ultimately came from a rock, you're welcome to believe that. This is America, the land of the land of the free and the home of the slave. But you cannot teach that with my tax dollars without me griping about it.
Why can't I just object to particle physics and say I don't believe in it?
Go ahead. Start your own program and do that. But see, that is different kinds of evidence. There is no evidence for evolution, and I don't think you'd find a majority.
I've already given you evidence for evolution on the air twice.
You have?
Yeah. Genetic evidence, which is the most powerful kind of evidence possible.
Refresh my memory, because they didn't know about genetic evidence back in Darwin's day, but he taught it.
Yeah, that's true. I gave you evidence from endogenous retroviruses from the...
Real quick, as you're talking about those, there's, did you get your information about the endogenous retroviruses from Douglas Theobald's paper?
I did from there and several other places, too.
Okay, so, first of all, I want to point out one thing that I think is really interesting. The Theobald's paper on talk origins, which I'm assuming is where you got it, right?
That's the first place that I looked.
Okay, that is not a peer-reviewed website. So you're kind of, I'm not saying, you, but evolutionists who want to use papers from there, it's kind of hypocritical for them to ask that creationists publish in peer-reviewed papers and then use that as an authority to argue for evolution.
Absolutely not, and I'll tell you why.
Well, hold on a second. Come on now. Secondly, there is a huge, almost point-by-point rebuttal by, what's his name? You probably know.
Ashby Camp.
Ashby Camp, yeah, that even talks about the endogenous retroviruses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read it,
John
too.
Whitcomb also talks about that as well.
Yeah.
So,
and Camp's rebuttal has been rebutted, and it's pretty clear that Ashby Camp doesn't know what he's talking about.
He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Because he disagrees with Jared.
Of course.
No, it's not because he disagrees. I read his rebuttal very carefully, and he has serious flaws in his reasoning.
Okay, I read Darwin's book very carefully, and he has serious flaws in his reasoning.
Darwin does have flaws in his reasoning.
And I listened to you very carefully, and you have serious flaws in your reasoning. So
give me one serious flaw in my reasoning, Kent. I want to hear it. You
are assuming that because we see variations and mutations, it can be extrapolated forever from a rock to a dog.
Nope. No. That is not. I would never believe in evolution because of that. And every time that I meet somebody who believes in evolution, and I ask them why, and they tell me because they see variation and speciation happen, I tell them that they have not looked into it enough and they shouldn't believe in evolution. Because that is not the reason why you should believe in the theory.
All right. Well, that's been 20 minutes. Give me your last comment here, Jared. We love having you call, but I got a lot of folks waiting here.
Oh, there's a couple of things I want to say. One thing is the KNMER-14, that's not a modern human fossil. The brain size was 750 cc's. Okay, Modern humans have 1.5 times that.
Well, no, not children and not dwarfs.
This is not a childlike skull. This is an anatomically adult skull.
And microcephaly and all that stuff. But there's lots of reasons people can have a smaller skull than that. There's a guy who had a skull of about 1,000 cc, a Frenchman who was an absolute genius, had an IQ of over 200. Skull of 1,000 cc.
That's not what we expect statistically, though.
Well, it can happen, though. And same thing with
but science is about statistics, not about absolutes. That's the difference between science and faith.
Well, they absolutely found one skull, so you can't assume that it's an average. Anyway, we got break time here. Thanks for calling, Jared. We'll talk to you again tomorrow if you want to call in. Folks, we'll be back in about 30 seconds. Get your calls in here. Thanks a lot.